You know, when you analyze federal bureaucracy, especially in the defense sector, there is this ingrained expectation of this, like, unstoppable glacier.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Right. You get a mandate, a deadline is set, and it just moves forward, crushing everything in its path. You either adapt or you get flattened.
It feels entirely inevitable. I mean, the machine's just too big to stop, so you just brace for the impact and figure out how to pay for it.
Exactly. But then you look at what happened on July 13th, 2026. Suddenly, that regulatory glacier didn't just stop. It executed a complete U-turn.
A massive pivot.
Yeah, we are looking at a landscape that completely shattered expectations and, frankly, a lot of business models overnight.
It is the absolute definition of an institutional pivot. And it caught a lot of people flat-footed, because they assumed the compliance train was never going to derail.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking you right into the heart of this massive shift. Our mission is to decode the July 13th, 2026 Department of War suspension of CMMC Phase II.
It is such a critical topic for anyone in the space right now.
It really is. And to piece this all together for you, we've pulled from a pretty massive stack of sources. We've got the official Dow implementation memo, specifically memo 26P1823. We also have cost data from the SBA, some GAO reports, and several comprehensive cybersecurity policy analyses.
Setting the stage for you here is crucial because, the headlines have really been dominated by this narrative that the government failed again or that another massive program collapsed under its own weight.
I am so glad you brought that up because our sources indicate that is completely the wrong takeaway.
Right.
This isn't a story about a failed program at all. It is a story of a highly pragmatic, massive pivot toward what the department is calling speed to capability. It's about agile security.
Which is a huge distinction.
It is. Whether you are a prime contractor managing a massive supply chain, a small business just, trying to keep your margins intact, or an MSP looking to capture a new market, this pause is actually a golden opportunity.
Yeah, you finally have some breathing room.
Exactly. You now have the runway to build better, more scalable defense systems without being totally crushed by compliance theater. And actually, I love the visual cue you've got going on your end to represent this.
Oh, the background.
Yeah, your backdrop just shifted to this, dynamic digital cityscape overlaying massive gears of industry. It's very cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it perfectly captures the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base.
Yeah.
You have all these interconnected gears, right? From the massive aerospace primes all the way down to a 10-person machine shop stamping out specialized bolts.
Right.
And they're all just trying to move securely in this crazy digital environment.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because this landscape just tilted, we have to look at the mechanics of why the old rules hit a brick wall before we can talk about how you, the listener, should navigate the new ones.
Makes sense.
So on July 13th, the Dow officially suspended the transition to mandatory third-party assessments by C3PAOs, as well as the government-led DIB CAC assessments. The emergency brake basically got pulled.
What's fascinating here is that it really came down to a head-on collision between mathematical reality and strategic necessity.
The math just didn't work.
It really didn't. The two drivers were cost and capacity. Let's look at the original modeling for a second. The department's initial estimates projected that a Level 2 third-party audit would cost a small entity around $104,000.
Which, if you run a small machine shop, is already a massive overhead hit just to prove you are allowed to bid on work you've already been doing for decades.
Exactly. And that was the optimistic estimate.
Right, really?
Oh, yeah. The real-world data started rolling in from SBA and industry roundtables, and they looked at the true all-in burden. It wasn't just the fee you handed to the auditor.
Right, it's everything else.
It was the complete overhaul of legacy systems, the hardware upgrades, software licensing, managed SOC services, and, all the consulting fees just to get audit ready.
So what was the actual number?
The SBA data showed the real-world cost for a small business was averaging a staggering $593,800.
Wow. Over $500,000.
Yeah.
You are essentially asking a small business to mortgage its future just to get a permission slip to play.
And then you compound that with a capacity issue. The DIB has over 100,000 contractors that require these assessments. But the sources point out there were only about 104 authorized C3PAOs available in the market.
Okay, so basically around 100 assessor groups for 100,000 companies. I mean, imagine mandating that 100,000 cars must pass through a single toll booth by a strict deadline, but you only hired one toll worker.
Right.
It's not a traffic problem at that point. It's a math impossibility. The entire supply chain is going to completely gridlock.
And Secretary Hegseth's acquisition transformation strategy specifically called this out. The leadership looked at that math and recognized it as an existential threat.
They had to pivot.
They did. The strategy explicitly elevates warfighter readiness and the rapid scaling of commercial capabilities above all else. They realized this toll booth bottleneck was literally forcing innovative, non-traditional companies out of the defense market entirely.
Because if you have a dual-use technology and the commercial sector doesn't require a $600,000 audit, you just pivot to commercial and ignore the Dow W. Why bother?
Exactly. The DIB was shrinking at the exact moment it desperately needed to expand. So the suspension was a strategic, deliberate choice. They chose speed to capability for the many, rather than unaffordable, exclusionary rigor for the few.
Which is a massive relief. But we have to address the elephant in the room here.
Let's do it.
It is so incredibly easy to hear the word suspension and assume the rules are just gone. I bet a lot of folks might be tempted to toss their system security plans in a drawer and just coast.
Oh, absolutely.
But our sources make it abundantly clear that is the single most dangerous misread of this U-turn.
We really have to draw a hard line here between what was suspended and what remains fiercely active.
Right.
The third-party audits were suspended. That's it. The underlying security floor, the actual requirement to secure the data, is completely untouched.
So DFARS 252.2047012 and FARFAR 52.20421 are still fully legally binding contracts. Nothing changed there.
Nothing at all. You still have a contractual duty to safeguard controlled unclassified information, or CUI, and federal contract information.
Yeah.
You must still complete your Level 1 and Level 2 self-assessments against the 110 controls of NIST 800-171 Rev 2. You still have to maintain an accurate SSP, and you still must upload your assessment scores to SPRS.
Okay, but let me push back on that a little bit. If the gatekeepers are gone, if the auditors aren't coming to check the homework, human nature suggests those SPRS scores are going to magically inflate.
Naturally, yeah.
Are we really just defaulting to an honor system where companies claim a perfect 1 in 10 score knowing nobody is looking?
Well, on paper, it might look like an honor system.
Yeah.
But the mechanism of enforcement has entirely shape-shifted.
How so?
The Department of Justice has activated the Civil Cyber Fraud Initiative. The enforcement stick is no longer a proactive audit that blocks you from getting a contract. The stick is retrospective False Claims Act litigation.
Oh, wow, the FCA. Which brings treble damages into play. This isn't just a slap on the wrist.
No, it is existential financial ruin if you handle it poorly. When you upload your score to SPRS, an executive at your company must sign an annual affirmation stating that the score is accurate and truthful.
Right.
Under the Civil Cyber Fraud Initiative, if you suffer a breach, or, and this is the really critical part, if a whistleblower reports you, the DOJ investigates.
Wait, let's pull the thread on that whistleblower aspect of the QUITAM provision.
Yeah.
Anyone in the company, like an IT admin or just a disgruntled employee, can report a false SPRS score to the DOJ.
Yes.
And potentially get a percentage of the settlement. That fundamentally changes the internal risk dynamic.
It deputizes your entire workforce. If the DOJ finds out you affirmed a perfect score of 110, but your SSP was basically fiction, and you hadn't actually implemented basic access controls or MFA. You didn't just fail an audit. You lied to the federal government to secure federal funds.
So it's essentially a perjury system.
Yeah.
You can self-attest, but if you lie on that executive affirmation, the financial penalties under the FCA will absolutely dwarf whatever an auditor would have charged you.
Oh, by a mile.
I mean, if you have a $5 million contract, treble damages could mean a $15 million fine plus per claim penalties.
The liability is just massive, and it shifts the entire burden of proof. And, understanding that liability helps us map out the ripple effects across the board because different stakeholders are navigating this in totally different ways.
Let's look at those stakeholders. For the small and medium businesses, this is immediate financial relief. They no longer face a $500,000 barrier just to enter the market, but they carry this incredibly elevated FCA risk if their internal self-scores are sloppy. They have to be intellectually honest about their security posture.
Exactly. And then you look at the prime contractors, the massive aerospace and defense integrators, they actually lose their easy button.
Because before, they could just bake a clause into their subcontract saying, show me your CMMC certification or you can't be on the team. It outsourced all the vetting?
Yep, it outsourced it entirely to the C3PAOs. But now, primes carry flow-down liability for their supply chain under that DFAR 7.12 clause.
Wow.
If a sub gets breached because of a lie, the primes program is jeopardized. So primes have to manually vet their subcontractors, they have to actually read the SSPs, review the plans of action and milestones, and verify the security posture themselves to ensure they aren't introducing a weak link into a major weapons program.
That requires a totally different relationship with the supply chain. It moves from outsourced compliance to collaborative risk management. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because whole network hardening is just too expensive for a small supplier, the DAO is heavily signaling a shift towards secure by design architectures. We are seeing an absolute boom for cloud service providers and MSPs.
The focus is rapidly moving away from the perimeter and toward secure enclaves.
Think of it like this. Instead of spending a fortune trying to turn your entire house into a fortified bunker with steel doors, laser grids, and armed guards, which is what the old on-premise compliance model felt like, you just rent a high-security safe deposit box at a bank.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. You put your most sensitive CUI in that vault, and you let your kids keep playing in the living room. You leave the rest of your house alone.
It's the most efficient path forward, and the DAO is actively pushing the DIB in this direction. In the RFI that was issued alongside the suspension memo, they specifically asked for industry input on how to recognize commercial managed services and telemetry in a compliance framework.
They are basically asking, how do we scale this without building it ourselves?
They want commercial solutions. It signals a future where CSPs and MSPs who offer pre-secured, FedRAMP, moderate equivalent virtual workspaces will dominate.
It makes total sense.
I mean, why would a 50-person manufacturing firm try to build a compliant IT infrastructure from scratch when they can just rent a compliant virtual desktop and enclave from an MSP?
Which brings up a very practical danger for you, the listener, if you are a contractor utilizing these shared services. If I rent that vault, if I hire an MSP and use their FedRAMP cloud, I might assume I can just wash my hands of the compliance. Am I entirely off the hook, or does the FCA still apply to me if they mess up?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can outsource the IT infrastructure, but you can never outsource the risk or the liability. You, the contractor, are ultimately the one signing that annual SPRS affirmation.
So I can't just point the finger at my cloud provider if the DOJ comes knocking and say, well, they said it was secure.
No, the DOJ will point right back to your signature. This is why managing shared services and documentation is so critical. Contractors utilizing cloud environments for CUI must ensure those systems meet the FedRAMP moderate baseline, or a strict equivalent.
Right.
But beyond that, you have to manage the shared responsibility matrix.
Break down how that actually functions in practice.
Sure. So, if you rent a FedRAMP environment, you inherit the physical security controls of the server farm. The vendor secures the hypervisor.
Okay.
But the vendor doesn't manage your internal Active Directory. They don't enforce your MFA policies for your employees. If a breach happens because an employee used a weak password to access the enclave, the DOJ isn't looking at the cloud provider.
They are looking at your internal access controls, which you affirmed were compliant.
Exactly. Therefore, MSPs and vendors must meticulously document these inherited controls and service boundaries. Because self-attestation is the only gateway right now, maintaining a highly accurate SSP and POANM is your primary defense against FCA liability.
So if you are an MSP trying to win business in this new landscape, you can't just sell the software anymore. You really have to sell the compliance proof.
You have to package evidence reuse models for your clients. We are talking about machine-readable control mappings using formats like OSCAL.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. If a contractor buys your service, you should hand them a package that basically says, here are the exact NIST 800-171 Rev 2 controls our platform covers, here is our shared responsibility matrix, and here's the exact evidence you can plug directly into your SSP.
You are handing them a shield. You are giving them defensible proof so they can confidently sign their name on that SPRS affirmation without sweating a whistleblower lawsuit.
That is exactly how you win the market. You solve their liability problem, not just their IT problem.
Okay, so we've explored the math behind the bottleneck, the brutal reality of FCA litigation, and the technical pivot toward secure enclaves. Let's distill all of this into a highly actionable playbook. We need a concrete do now and defer plan for you to apply today.
Let's start with the small and medium suppliers. Your do now is to continue implementing NIST 800-171 Rev 2. Do not stop.
Keep going.
Keep your SPRS scores perfectly accurate, even if they are low. A truthful low score with a solid POA&M is infinitely better than a fabricated high score that invites an FCA lawsuit.
For sure.
And take the capital you just saved from that canceled C3PAO audit and invest it into actual security tooling. Focus on continuous monitoring and telemetry.
And if you are a prime contractor, your due now is to immediately re-baseline your supplier communications. Stop sending out threatening emails demanding November 2026 audit gates.
Yes, please stop doing that.
Start verifying the actual SPRS hygiene of your supply chain. Ask to review their SSPs.
Moving to the defer list. First, do not book a new expensive formal assessment right now unless a specific prime contractor is absolutely forcing your hand for a critical program. Just save your capital.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the second item on the defer list? Because this is arguably the most important, and it is causing massive confusion. Do not formally transition your systems to NIST 800-171 Rev 3 yet.
The urge to jump to the newest framework is really strong, especially since Rev 3 is finalized at NIST. But doing that right now fundamentally breaks your compliance posture with Adele.
It's like studying for the wrong final exam.
Exactly.
Rev 2 is still the legally binding contract standard in DFARS 7012. If you build your SSP to Rev 3 right now and map all your controls to the new framework, your scores will not map correctly to the Rev 2 requirements inside the SPRS database. You will create an administrative nightmare for yourself.
This raises an important question about timing, though. The CMMC Reform Task Force is currently evaluating the next steps, and the policy analyses in our sources point to a risk-tiered hybrid model as the most probable outcome.
Meaning they are going to bifurcate the market.
They will likely put a fence around the most highly sensitive contracts. Nuclear command and control, advanced weapons systems, black programs.
The really heavy stuff.
Yeah. Those will eventually require a third-party audit. But the vast majority of the standard supply chain will stay on this self-assessment and continuous monitoring track indefinitely.
So Rev 2 really is the anchor point for the foreseeable future.
The smartest strategic move you can make today is to build a rock-solid, verifiable Rev 2 baseline. That becomes your springboard.
Right.
Whether the task force eventually requires your specific tier of companies to get audited or asks you to map to Rev 3 in 2 or 3 years, a truthful, accurate Rev 2 posture prepares you for whatever comes next.
It strips away the compliance theater and forces a focus on real security. That is the ultimate takeaway here. This Phase 2 pause is a massive victory for common sense.
Yeah, it really is.
The Dow W removed the bureaucratic red tape that was suffocating the DIB, replacing it with a demand for actual continuous cyber resilience. You don't have to bankrupt your company paying an auditor, but you absolutely must secure the data or the DOJ will hold you accountable.
It is a profound positive shift for the defense sector. However, based on our sources, I'm going to leave you with one final, very provocative dynamic to watch.
Okay, let's hear it.
We just established the danger of jumping to Rev 3 too early because the Dow is anchored to Rev 2.
The anchor is fully set.
But there is a massive proposed rule moving through the broader federal government right now called the FAR CUI rule. The explicit end of that rule is to mandate NIST 800-171 Rev 3 across all non-defense civilian agencies.
Oh, man.
Yep.
So if you are a dual-use contractor doing work for the Dow debut, you are legally bound to Rev 2. But if you also build software for NASA or manage data for the Department of Energy, they are pushing toward Rev 3.
That is the looming collision. Contractors working across both defense and civilian sectors might very soon find themselves trapped between two entirely different legally binding security standards.
Wow.
Managing an SSP that satisfies both a Rev 2 Dow requirement and a Rev 3 civilian requirement is going to be a massive federal fragmentation issue to keep an eye on.
It's like navigating this U-turn successfully, only to realize you are now straddling two different highways going in completely different directions. It requires a level of agility we just haven't seen demanded before.
It is deeply complex. But, understanding these structural dynamics, the FCA liability, the Enclave models, the Rev 2 anchor, it gives you a massive competitive advantage while your competitors are still trying to figure out what happened to the old rules.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take this U-turn as the opportunity it is. Go review those SSPs, demand defensible proof from your cloud providers, make absolutely sure your SPR scores are bulletproof against an FCA challenge, and embrace the chance to build smarter, faster security. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.